Welcome everybody. Today we're going to break down and review one of the best lanes that I've seen in a while. And of course, it's played by Chovy. He uses all the mid lane fundamentals in such a easy, simple, but such a perfect and beautiful fashion that it just automatically wins him the lane. And he's playing the Ahri versus Victor matchup. That in and of itself is actually not an extremely good matchup for Ahri. But if you know how to play the fundamentals of mid lane, you can actually break through it and you're going to be totally fine. So a few things to keep in mind, right? Ahri is a champion that wants to get to level 6 and then wants to take over the game with good quality skirmishes around her ult, sync up with her jungle and look for these skirmishes. Victor is a champion that wants to win the lane in the isolated 1v1, pin the enemy laner down, make sure that he always gets first move into neutral objectives and plays, and that the enemies are then running towards him. So what Chovy really needs to figure out in this matchup is how do we get from this weaker 1v1 laning position into a position where we can actually start impacting the map and make sure that we don't get isolated all that much, right? Because that's Victor's strength. Victor's a really strong trader, Ahri slightly less. And what he did really smart in this game is he recognized, okay, Victor's a DFT champion, right? Deathfire touch. So the trades in the lane are going to be quite extended and the value of second wind is therefore going to be really high. So he takes second wind and he takes taste of blood. And this is going to make it kind of hard for Victor to now break through Chovy in the lane. Besides that, we're going to use the offense as defense strategy. I've already made a video about this in the past, but to give you guys a little bit of a heads up, this means that we're going to push the wave in. And by getting the push, we're going to make it hard for Victor to hit us because he's constantly responding to minions basically dying. And it's going to be harder for him to then hit us with trades. And it's going to give us the space in the lane to then step up and harass him onto his minions whenever he does that. He wants to CS because we've already then CS'd our minions. And if we ever drop low, we can always just take a reset because we have a pushing wave state. So let's just go back and identify what he does here on wave 1. So whenever you're a champion, right, that wants to minimize the early lane and basically be a little bit careful with the level 1 trades because the enemy lane is a stronger trader, what you want to do is you want to actually sync up minion HP values, right? You want to have these minions die at the same time because if they do, it's going to be quite hard for the enemy to actually find a trading opportunity on you because they need to CS themselves. So you see what Chovy does here. He out-attacks his one minion because he thinks that Victor is going to out-attack one of his own minions, right? And then he waits to see which minions Victor is out-attacking so he can sync up minion HP value. And you see that he does a pretty damn good job syncing these two minions, but Victor actually started E instead of Q. And because of that, he can just go for a high value spell. But that's fine because Victor's E cooldown is insanely long and actually not that threatening in the early game. So him starting E, even though that he got the trade onto us, is really good for us because we can now use the fact that his E is on cooldown, step up, take up Q, and then on this minion, right now, when we have a trading opportunity, we can look for high value Q through the wave and onto Victor. So this is insanely good positioning by Chovy, where he's standing right now. Very nice. And then he drags the Q back through all of the minions, so that he's in a position where he now gets the push and he can play the offensive defense strategy. Now, what we identify is that we have our next Q cooldown coming up. So if we see an angle, we're going to throw a Q, but none of these minions are actually dying, so he holds his Q, okay? And now when this minion's actually dying, that's when he throws the Q again. You see that he is an insanely intentional ability usage. He's not randomly throwing out spells. He's only doing it onto the last hits. And that puts him in this really strong position. So his positioning right now deep in the lane is also so that whenever Victor then needs to step up to CS this minion, he can then immediately harass him and actually trade onto him. And he does that in this case with Electrocute. So he stands close enough to get the out attack in. If he out attacks, W targets onto Victor and then the Q lands as well and he gets the Electrocute trade. And you got to keep in mind that if we have the good quality wave state, trading is actually not bad for us as Ahri because if we trade, heavy trade, and we have a pushing wave state, we can always reset whenever we want. So this was a beautiful early lane. Final nice little Q right there, max range onto that minion. Really sexy fundamentals by Chovy. This is basically the perfect early lane of how he got it. Now, Victor just used both of his spells, which means that we can now, once again, step up, get control in the lane, and play offensive defense on the wave set again. So we queue the entire minion wave to make sure that we're then in a position where, by queuing the entire minion wave here, we always will be hitting the level up spikes on time. And since this is a cannon wave, it's okay to be a little bit more aggressive here on this wave set and see if we can get it out. He puts an extra point in his queue, and by putting extra point in his queue, he has more wave control. Now, he does a really interesting thing here, okay? This cannon wave push out is a bit of a trick that Chovy uses lately on champions that aren't really struggling with mana issues in the early game. Because if you hard nuke the wave like this, either one of two things is going to happen. The enemies are going to let the wave crash, And they're then going to have a really tough time seizing these minions on the tower with the new minion wave coming in. Or they're going to need to hold the wave. And when they're holding the wave, a very simple thing happens. These minions will just start hitting the enemies, means that they just lose HP, and the minions will then do the trading for us. How nice is that? He also does that on champs like Rise, where he just nukes the third wave sometimes, and he then gets in a position where he is letting the minions do the trading for him. Now, Victor slightly holds the wave right here, but that's no problem, because we're Ari at 2 points in Q, level 3, which means that we very simply can just play offense as defense, where we're just going to push the wave. And he's doing that perfectly right now, where he's nuking this next minion wave in. And the beauty here is that Victor tries to punish Chovy onto the fact that he uses his Q, but we have a beautiful level up spike, and this allows us to get a nice little solo kill. Now, this is literally almost the perfect early lane, guys. Perfect strategy, right? Really intentional spell usage. Every single spell was used with intention. Good quality trading, good quality abusing of the enemies not having cooldown. And now the final thing, which is what I think is so incredibly beautiful here, is he hard nukes this wave into a reset, because this is wave 5, and this is the perfect time to then base. And we now get ourselves an incredibly strong early base. Now, what I really like here is the items that he goes for. He goes for Dark Seal, he goes for Mana Crystal, and he goes for Amp-Tome. This is really stat-heavy items, okay? Boots versus Victor aren't particularly good because of the fact that you can maybe dodge his E, but if a Victor is good, he's going to land the E anyway. If you're versus Orianna, you really have value in T1 boots, so you generally want to go T1 boot step. But you really want this mana so you can do more Qs on the wave, and then the rest is AP, so you can start kind of like stat check, right? And what's the first thing that he's going to do? Immediately Q the wave for this exact same reason. We're going to play offense as defense. This is also going to allow us to then be available into if something happens on the map. And we are not shy of trading onto the Victor if the position is good for us, because of the fact that the wave is in a really good spot and we still have TP while the enemy Victor doesn't have TP. Plus, we can just play offense as defense. We can reset whenever we want, and then we can just get ourselves a nice little power spike over this Victor. So we trade a little bit of resources with him. We just TP back. Now we also have the boots, which is a nice spike. And we're just going to be completely stat checking Victor from this position because we just have way better items. Now, Victor then goes for the reset right now. And this is going to allow us to pick up a plate. And this is all because we are basically reset trapping the Victor. This is what Chovy is like really, really good at doing. And this is kind of the thing that I see him do over mid laners, for example, like Faker. Faker would like stay in the lane and he would extend the lane position. Chovy actually takes the reset and he traps the enemies with the reset trap. Either he's going to be stat checking them, or he's going to be in a position where he gets a tempo lead, because resetting before the enemies is actually a very powerful thing to do in this new season because of the home guards. And it's going to allow you to hit plates, and it's going to allow you to get that potential tempo opportunities to then get vision around the map, or just be in a spot where you can make a play with your R. And you see that he's really playing to just get lane control here, right? It's okay if he gets hit. That is just Victor. You see that Victor still does an immense amount of damage, even with pretty shit items. And you see that the Victor once again disrespects here. And of course, Victor really wants to trade, right? He doesn't want to give Chovy this reset. Because giving Chovy this reset would mean that he would just be stuck in the lane again, because Victor has no way to reset and push the wave fast. He's just not strong enough in that sense. He doesn't have enough wave clear. So Chovy does an incredible job at fishing for a charm. And the moment the charm lands, that's when he actually all-ins. If this charm doesn't land, he can just back off and he's totally fine. But since the charm lands, he can now all in. And does an amazing, amazing job dashing around the key spells from the Victor and getting the solo kill. And from this point, very simply put, the game is over for Victor. The lane is completely done. Now, because of the fact that we are so strong, right, he now actually does not opt in for refill. Refill is really nice, but Chovy is so confident in just playing offense as defense, getting the wave push, that he actually doesn't opt in for this spell. Now we see a really beautiful hook from the Nautilus, and you see that it's just absolute carnage, this lane, right? We just permanently resetting, playing tempo over the enemy laner, and this allows us to also now be in a position where we can start impacting the map, right? Whenever something happens, we see that Quinn's invading the enemy topside, and because we have permanent control with the wave, we are now always the first one to move. We get a nice pickup onto the Vi, and it's just complete snowball fiesta from this point. So, insanely nice lane from Chovy. What is the key thing that is important to highlight here is the way that he uses his spells. Every single spell, guys, is used with maximum intention. Not a single spell is wasted. He knows exactly when he wins the trades, and that's when he steps up. And when he doesn't win, that's when he respects and he tries to like bait it out. And if the enemies then use their cooldown, he takes up space in the lane and actually applies his strategy that he's basically pre-made. And you see that this Victor player had no idea how to deal with that. As a Victor player versus a competent Ahri, you cannot get away with running TP. With running Ghost, because they will just attack the wave, and it's going to be extremely hard for you to stop that. So you need this early resetting opportunity from the TP, and then you want to try to get towards the later part of in the lane, where in the later part of the lane, Victor will actually start beating Ahri pretty hard, because Victor's damage then gets incredibly high, and the moment he can start getting E-upgrade, he can also start matching this wave clear power. So that's when Victor can actually get through to the Ahri. Of course, it's a little bit of a skill game then, but that's the mindset at least. Generally speaking, amazing game by Chovy. If you want to see the rest of this VOD for yourself, he eventually loses the game because of a giga team gap, but he does some other really nice rotations, and I think he plays the macro out pretty well. I'm going to leave it in the description here. And yeah, thank you all for watching. See you guys real soon in a new video. Peace out.